How would you feel if, as an artisan working in your client's compound, you found a strange bottle containing the image of a man seeking help? Would you set him free or give the bottle to your client? Was the story of Donald. Donald, a skilled plumber, never expected his night to be anything but ordinary. A mysterious call had led him to an unfamiliar mansion deep in the city. The unknown woman's voice was soft, almost hypnotic, urging him to hurry. As he entered the grand hall, the air felt thick, charged with a strange energy. The walls seemed to whisper secrets only the night could understand. Donald carried his tools, unaware that something unnatural awaited him. He reached the backyard where the soakaway needed fixing, but his eyes caught something odd. Buried under a thin layer of soil was a small, ornate bottle glowing faintly. Inside, he could see the image of a man, his eyes wide with fear. Donald froze, staring at the bottle, unsure whether it was some clever trick. The man inside moved, his lips forming silent pleas for help. A chill ran down Donald's spine as he felt the city's night air thicken around him. He knelt, brushing the soil from the bottle, noticing strange symbols etched on its surface. The symbols seemed to pulse, as if alive, reacting to his touch. Donald wondered if this was part of some dark magic he had only heard about. The man's image twisted, mouth opening as if he could speak, yet no sound emerged. Donald's heart raced, torn between fear and curiosity. Could he ignore this mysterious figure, or would his conscience demand action? From inside the house, faint footsteps echoed, and Donald's hands trembled. The unknown woman might return at any moment, expecting him to finish the soak away. He debated whether to bury the bottle again, or risk revealing its existence. Donald finally lifted the bottle, holding it close, feeling a strange warmth from within. The man inside reached out with a shadowy hand, desperate and pleading. A whisper brushed Donald's mind. "Set me free before it's too late." Donald quickly slid the bottle into his bag, careful not to jostle it too much. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to appear calm and professional. The city's night felt heavier, as if it knew he carried something forbidden. He returned to the house, kneeling to inspect the soakaway without looking suspicious. The unknown woman watched silently, her eyes sharp, almost knowing something was off. Donald kept his movements deliberate, hiding the secret that could change everything. As he worked, the bottle inside his bag pulsed faintly, almost impatiently. Donald could feel the man's presence, whispering like a shadow in his mind. Every clink of his tools seemed amplified, echoing the tension of the night. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft but commanding, asking if everything was okay. Donald smiled politely, masking the fear that gnawed at him from within. He nodded, assuring her the soakaway would be fixed soon, hiding the bottle's truth. After finishing the soakaway, the woman invited Donald into her room under the pretense of showing him something. The room was lavishly decorated, with pictures and trinkets lining the walls. As Donald's eyes scanned the portraits, one figure made his blood run cold. Kola, the man trapped inside the bottle. Donald's heart skipped a beat as he realized the man in the picture was the same one pleading for help in his bag. The coincidence, or perhaps fate, was too precise to ignore. Questions swirled in his mind. Who was this woman, and why was Kola both in the bottle and on her wall? He tried to remain calm, forcing a casual smile as he admired the other pictures. Yet every glance at Kola's image made the whispers in his mind grow louder. Donald's hands itched to open the bag and confront the truth of the mysterious prisoner. The woman noticed his lingering gaze, tilting her head with a knowing smile. Her eyes seemed to pierce through him, almost daring him to speak. Donald swallowed hard, realizing he had stepped into something far beyond plumbing. Donald smiled warmly. "You have a lot of beautiful pictures," he said, his eyes scanning the walls with genuine admiration. Among all the images, one caught his attention more than the others, and he lingered there thoughtfully. He hoped his compliment would seem innocent, simply an appreciation for the craftsmanship of the portraits. The woman, Mrs. Adebayo, noticed his gaze and smiled politely, thinking he truly admired her taste. She was a tall, striking woman, rich, influential, and elegant, commanding attention without even trying. Donald couldn't help but be impressed, admiring both her poise and the artistry of her collection. He stepped closer, studying the frames with sincere curiosity, pretending to notice the details for the first time. His eyes lingered on the portrait that felt different, yet he kept his expression neutral. Mrs. Adebayo said nothing, simply allowing him to enjoy the display, confident in her visitor's manners. Donald continued his casual tour of the room, commenting on the fine details of the other pictures. He felt the need to understand why one image seemed so striking, though he said nothing out of place. Everything remained calm and refined, as Mrs. Adebayo believed he was simply appreciating her exquisite collection. Mrs. Adebayo's presence filled the room effortlessly, a reflection of her success and influence. She was stunning, elegant, and commanding, a woman who drew attention without even trying. As the CEO of multiple companies across the globe, from Paris and London to Dubai and Lagos, her reputation preceded her. Donald admired her poise while continuing to glance at the portraits, careful to appear polite. He noted how the room reflected her wealth and refined taste, each image carefully chosen. Yet one portrait, more striking than the others, quietly pulled at his curiosity. He lingered near the portrait, pretending to inspect the frame and the colors. Mrs. Adebayo noticed his interest and smiled warmly, believing he genuinely appreciated the craftsmanship. Donald's mind raced, trying to connect the striking image to the mysterious bottle he had hidden in his bag. "Your collection is impressive," Donald said, keeping his tone casual and sincere. He allowed his eyes to wander naturally, as if drawn by chance rather than intent. The woman nodded, pleased, unaware that her guest had already seen more than any visitor ever had. Donald's fingers twitched slightly as he felt the bottle pressing against his side. The man trapped inside seemed to move subtly, urging him to pay attention without exposing itself. He breathed steadily, masking his growing tension beneath a calm exterior. Mrs. Adebayo walked over to a side table, arranging a few objects with practiced grace. Her movements were fluid and confident, a reflection of the countless deals and meetings she had mastered. Donald watched silently, pretending to admire the room while keeping the secret in his bag. He glanced again at the striking portrait, noticing details he hadn't before. The man in the image seemed familiar, as if he knew the world outside that frame intimately. Donald's curiosity grew stronger, though he kept his voice light and complimentary. "You have a wonderful eye for art," Donald said, nodding toward the pictures. Mrs. Adebayo's smile widened, convinced he was simply a polite admirer of her taste. Donald allowed the compliment to mask his probing thoughts, careful not to raise suspicion. Donald cleared his throat, shifting his focus back to business. "Is it okay if I take my payment now?" he asked politely, keeping his tone casual. Mrs. Adebayo nodded, reaching for her checkbook with a gracious smile. She handed him a thick envelope, the weight of it confirming the generous sum inside. Donald accepted it with a smile, careful not to reveal the nervous excitement bubbling within him. Donald finally arrived at his modest apartment, the bag still safely hidden at his side. He placed it on the table and stared at it, knowing that the night's work had only just begun. The man inside shifted again, eyes pleading silently for release. Donald placed the bag on his table, ready to finally inspect the mysterious bottle. As he reached inside, he felt an intense, almost suffocating urge not to release the image. A strange energy seemed to surround the bottle, pressing against his senses like a warning. He pulled back slightly, his heart racing. "If my spirit does not feel like releasing you, you must be a bad person," he muttered aloud. The city's night outside felt distant, as if time itself had paused around him. Donald's hands hovered over the bottle, unsure whether curiosity or caution should guide him. The man's image inside the bottle shifted, but the energy pressing against Donald remained strong. He sensed that forcing it open might bring consequences he couldn't control. Donald knew he had to trust his instincts, no matter how desperate the trapped man appeared. With a deep breath, Donald lowered the bottle back into the bag, resisting the urge to release it. He felt a mixture of relief and tension, knowing he had made the right choice for now. The whispers from within seemed to fade, though they left an uneasy echo in his mind. Donald leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully about what had just happened. He realized that freeing someone blindly could be dangerous. The following morning, Donald returned to Mrs. Adebayo's mansion, carrying himself with calm professionalism. He pretended to ask about the soak-away job from the previous night, masking his true intentions. In reality, he wanted answers about the pictures, especially the one that had captured his attention so deeply. Mrs. Adebayo greeted him warmly, her elegance and confidence filling the room as always. Donald noticed her impeccable style and the quiet authority she carried in every gesture. He forced a casual smile, careful not to reveal his curiosity about Kola's portrait. "I wanted to check if everything was working fine," Donald said, keeping his tone light. As he spoke, his eyes subtly wandered toward the wall of portraits once more. That one particular image, the one of the man, pulled at him, urging silent questions. Mrs. Adebayo nodded, seemingly pleased by his professionalism, unaware of his true reason for returning. Donald lingered, pretending to admire the craftsmanship and arrangement of the pictures. Every glance at Kola's portrait made his mind race with possibilities and hidden stories. He inched closer to the wall, using casual movements to study the images without raising suspicion. The other portraits told ordinary stories of business and family, but this one felt different. Donald sensed a mystery lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for him to uncover it. He noticed small details in the frame, symbols and patterns he hadn't seen before. Donald's fingers itched to take notes or ask subtle questions about the man in the picture. He remained calm, masking the urgency that threatened to show on his face. Mrs. Adebayo approached him, placing a hand lightly on the side table. Donald straightened, forcing a polite smile as if nothing unusual had caught his attention. Her warmth and elegance made it easy to blend curiosity with compliment without arousing suspicion. "Your collection is impressive," Donald said, nodding toward the wall of portraits. He kept his voice casual, allowing it to sound like a genuine compliment rather than an investigation. Mrs. Adebayo's smile widened, believing he truly appreciated the artistry of her collection. Donald studied the man's portrait again, comparing it in his mind to the image in the bottle. He realized the resemblance was undeniable, though he dared not mention it aloud. Every subtle detail seemed to hint at a story that Mrs. Adebayo had carefully hidden. As he prepared to leave, Donald's eyes lingered on Kola's image once more. A quiet determination began to form in his mind, planning how he could learn the truth. The city outside continued its usual hum, unaware of the secret unfolding inside the mansion. As Donald's eyes wandered, he noticed a large, framed wedding picture of Mrs. Adebayo and her husband. Curiosity tugged at him, and he decided to ask a simple, polite question. "Where is he now?" Donald asked, gesturing subtly toward the picture. Mrs. Adebayo's expression shifted slightly, her smile fading into a calm, distant look. "He is dead," she said softly, her voice steady but carrying a weight of sorrow. Donald froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden revelation, though he kept his composure. He wondered silently how her husband's death connected. He wondered why Kola's image had been placed among all these pictures, so prominent yet mysterious. Donald's eyes scanned the wall once more, counting a total of 9 pictures neatly arranged. There was the wedding photo of Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo, followed by portraits of 7 children. He realized, with growing intrigue, that Kola must be one of the children in these images. He studied each child's portrait carefully, noting features and expressions, trying to identify which one matched the man in the bottle. Mrs. Adebayo stood nearby, unaware of the connection Donald was beginning to uncover. Her graceful composure made it easy to overlook the quiet intensity of his observations. Donald lingered on one particular portrait, a young man with sharp eyes and a serious expression. Something about the image mirrored the urgency and fear he had seen in the bottle. He felt certain that this was Kola, though he had to proceed cautiously. He smiled lightly, pretending to admire the child's portrait like he did with all the others. Mrs. Adebayo noticed his attention and assumed he appreciated the family's unity and elegance. Donald's mind, however, raced with questions about why Kola's image had been trapped underground. Donald counted the children silently, confirming there were 7 in total, each framed meticulously. The thought of one of them being imprisoned in a bottle sent a shiver down his spine. He knew he would need to discover the truth without alerting Mrs. Adebayo. He allowed his gaze to drift back to the wedding portrait, connecting it with the children's images. Donald realized the family's history was more complicated than appearances suggested. The bottle in his bag felt heavier now, a constant reminder of the secrets waiting to be revealed. Donald felt a growing sense of urgency, knowing he needed to uncover the reasons behind Kola's imprisonment. Yet he reminded himself to remain cautious, careful not to provoke suspicion. Curiosity finally getting the better of him. He pointed subtly and asked, "Who is he?" keeping his tone casual and respectful. Mrs. Adebayo's gaze softened, her voice carrying both pride and sorrow as she replied. "My son," she said gently. "His name is Kola, but we call him Kola for short." Donald listened carefully, pretending to admire the family while absorbing her words. Mrs. Adebayo continued, her voice filled with a mix of admiration and grief. "Kolawol's name truly brought wealth to our family, just as his name promises," she explained. Donald nodded politely, intrigued by the way she spoke of both fortune and misfortune. He has been a blessing in many ways, yet his life has also brought pain and sadness. Donald's mind raced, connecting the dots between Kola's portrait and the mysterious bottle he carried. He remained calm, careful not to betray his growing suspicion. Mrs. Adebayo's words hinted at a deeper story, one that was both magical and tragic. He studied her expression, noting the subtle mix of pride, grief, and caution in her eyes. Donald realized that Kola's life had been far more complicated than a simple family portrait could show. He felt a growing urgency to understand why Kola had been trapped in the bottle. Mrs. Adebayo glanced at the portraits behind her, her hand lingering on Kola's frame. Donald watched carefully, pretending to admire the craftsmanship while absorbing every detail. The story of wealth and sorrow that she hinted at made the mystery even more compelling. Donald felt the pull of the bottle in his bag, as if Kola himself sensed the conversation. He knew he had to tread carefully, asking the right questions without raising suspicion. The city outside hummed quietly, unaware of the secrets hidden within the mansion walls. Kolawol must be very special to bring both blessings and challenges, Donald said softly. Mrs. Adebayo nodded, her eyes reflecting both pride and sorrow simultaneously. Donald's curiosity deepened, the desire to know the truth about Kola and the bottle growing stronger. He lingered near the portraits, pretending to admire them while his mind raced with possibilities. The bottle in his bag seemed to thrum faintly, urging him to act carefully and wisely. Donald knew that uncovering Kola's story would require both patience and cunning. Then Donald said, "You must be a wicked mother to have put your son inside a bottle." The woman froze, her eyes widening in shock. She had never told anyone about the dark secret she carried for decades. How could this stranger possibly know? Her lips trembled as she stammered, What are you talking about?" She glanced around nervously, as if the walls might have ears. Donald's gaze was firm, piercing through her lies. "I know everything," Donald continued, his voice low and deliberate. "The little boy you trapped in that glass bottle, the curse you placed on him so he could never grow, and how you kept him hidden to protect your greed." The woman's knees weakened, and she clutched the wooden chair for support. No one was supposed to know about that." "Who sent you? Was it the sorcerer?" she asked in a whisper. Then Mrs. Adebayo broke down and started crying. Her voice trembled as she wiped her tears with the edge of her wrapper. She said she was a good woman, that when she and her husband were young, they had nothing. They struggled in poverty, but they loved each other deeply. Life was hard, yet they endured. Over the years, she gave birth to 7 children, 3 boys and 4 girls. She explained that a prophecy had once been given about their family, that one of their children would carry immense wealth, but that same child would also be the source of great disaster for them. At the time, she did not know which child it would be. She and her husband prayed day and night that this prophecy would not come to pass, but fate had other plans. With a heavy sigh, she revealed that the child in question was none other than Kolawol, her second son. "Kolawol, my son, you brought riches into this house, But you also brought the pain that is eating us alive today, she sobbed, clutching her chest as if her heart could no longer bear the weight of her words. In the prophecy about Kola's birth, they said he would bring immense sorrow and pain. At 17, he would kill his father and defile his own mother and sisters. He would then slaughter his brothers before ending his own life. Donald's breath caught as the words settled in his mind like ice. He stared at Mrs. Adebayo, unsure if he wanted to believe her or not. The room felt smaller, as though the walls were closing in on him. His voice shook when he finally broke the silence. What did you do, Mrs. Adebayo?" Donald asked cautiously. He leaned forward, searching her face for any sign of deceit. Mrs. Adebayo lowered her gaze, her voice soft but steady. "The day the prophecy was spoken, I swore to stop it at all costs." Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them in her lap. "I was a mother before I was anything else," she continued. "But I was also a woman who could not ignore such a warning." She looked at Donald as if expecting him to judge her. Donald sat still, his mind caught between pity and suspicion. Outside, a faint wind rattled the window frame. It felt as though the house itself was listening to their words. At first, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo thought it was all just a child's fantasy. But as the years went by, they saw an immense wealth pouring into their lives. People began to whisper that they had performed dark rituals to gain such fortune. They had completely forgotten the old prophecy given by the strange seer. Kola grew into a handsome, confident young man, surrounded by luxury. Their home became the envy of the entire community, yet a shadow lingered. On Kola's 17th birthday, the air was thick with celebration and laughter. Friends, family, and dignitaries filled the compound with gifts and blessings. No one imagined that the day would turn from joy to horror in an instant. Kola, in excitement, offered to help move one of the guest cars. As he tried to reverse the vehicle, his foot slipped off the brake. In a tragic flash, the car struck his father, knocking him lifeless to the ground. The screams of the guests pierced the once joyful atmosphere. Mrs. Adebayo rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, the prophecy she had buried in her memory came rushing back. She remembered the strange woman's voice warning her years ago. A son born under certain signs would bring wealth, but also death. Now, as she knelt beside her husband's body, the truth struck her heart. Neighbors murmured, recalling the day Mrs. Adebayo met the mysterious seer. Some crossed themselves in fear, convinced the family was cursed. The wealth that had once brought admiration now bred suspicion and dread. Mrs. Adebayo's mind swirled between grief and disbelief. Kola stood frozen, trembling at the sight of his father's blood. He could barely comprehend that his own hands had caused the tragedy. Some relatives urged her to send Kola away, fearing further misfortune. Others believed that the prophecy's curse was now complete. But deep within her, Mrs. Adebayo feared this was only the beginning. The burial was swift, with an eerie silence hanging over the mourners. No songs, no celebration of life, only whispers of doom. Kola could not bring himself to look anyone in the eye. At night, Mrs. Adebayo would wake to hear strange footsteps in the compound. Sometimes she swore she heard her husband's voice calling her name. Kola, too, began to dream of a shadow watching him from the corner of his room. Wealth still flowed in, but now it tasted like ashes in their mouths. Every coin felt like a reminder of the prophecy's price. The community began avoiding them, as though death lingered in their home. On the anniversary of his father's death, a strong wind shook the house. Doors banged open on their own, and the lights flickered endlessly. Mrs. Adebayo swore she saw her husband's figure standing in the doorway. Kola grew more withdrawn, refusing to drive or even touch a car. He feared that every movement might unleash another disaster. But destiny, it seemed, was not yet done with him. One evening, a letter arrived with no name or address. Inside was a single sentence written in shaky handwriting. "You cannot escape what was spoken at your birth." Mrs. Adebayo locked the letter away, hoping Kola would never see it. But the boy had already noticed her trembling hands. His questions went unanswered, deepening his quiet dread. Years later, when Kola turned 21, the mysterious seer returned. She stood at their gate, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her first words chilled them to the bone. The second half begins now. The mysterious seer said, "If you don't want your son to lie with you, your daughters, and kill your remaining sons, take this." She handed over a strange bottle with Kola's image trapped inside. "Bury it before midnight, and his growth will stop forever." Mrs. Adebayo took the bottle with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on the tiny image inside. The seer's warning echoed in her ears like a curse. She knew there was no time to waste. That night, she went behind the house to a quiet corner under the old mango tree. With her bare hands, she began to dig into the cool earth. The bottle felt heavier than glass should. When she placed the bottle in the ground, a cold wind brushed her cheek. She quickly covered it with soil and stepped back. The air felt strange, as if the world was holding its breath. At that exact moment, Kola, who had been playing inside, stopped laughing. He clutched his chest and staggered. Within seconds, he collapsed to the floor, motionless. Mr. Adebayo shouted for help as the children screamed in panic. Servants ran to get water and called the village doctor. But Kola did not respond to anything. Before the night ended, Kola slipped into a deep coma. His breathing was slow, and his face looked pale. Mrs. Adebayo watched silently, remembering the seer's words. Mrs. Adebayo turned slowly toward Donald, her eyes glistening with restrained emotion. The crowd fell silent, sensing something heavy in the air. Even the birds outside seemed to pause their singing. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but charged with meaning. "With all I have said, Donald, am I still a bad mother?" Her words cut through the room like a blade through silk. Donald's lips parted, but no sound came out. The weight of her question hit him harder than he expected. He blinked rapidly, trying to find the right words. Memories flashed in his mind, times when he judged her without knowing the truth. Times when he turned away instead of asking why. His throat tightened. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the faces around them. Every pair of eyes was on him, waiting for an answer. The silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. Mrs. Adebayo's gaze did not waver. She stood with quiet dignity, her shoulders squared. She had laid her soul bare, and now it was his turn to speak. Donald's voice trembled when he finally spoke. I don't know what to say." It was the only truth he could offer in that moment. She smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Then perhaps, my son, it's time to listen more than speak." Her tone was calm but firm. The room exhaled collectively, as if a tense string had been loosened. Some nodded in silent agreement. Others avoided Donald's eyes entirely. Donald's hands curled into fists at his sides. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at himself for being blind for so long. Shame pulled in his chest. Mrs. Adebayo stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "It's never too late to see people for who they really are, Donald," she whispered. He swallowed hard, feeling the warmth of her touch. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was an opening, a bridge he didn't deserve but needed to cross. As the room began to stir again, Donald realized this was more than just a conversation. It was a turning point, one that could rewrite their future if he let it. In the dream, Kola's hollow eyes glistened with tears as he reached out through a thick, swirling mist. "Donald, release me, please." Donald's hands trembled. Something in Kola's voice sounded human, desperate, but deep inside, he knew that opening that bottle might unleash something far worse than the nightmares. Mrs. Adebayo had warned him in her sharp, trembling voice. "If you break that seal, you won't just destroy my family, you'll doom the whole village." Donald clutched his head, torn between compassion and fear. Another night without sleep would surely drive him mad, but another night with that bottle sealed might condemn Kola forever. And then, at exactly midnight, the bottle moved. By itself. Donald froze. This was just the beginning. Watch out for part 2.